Well, Jeff, thanks for joining me on the pod today, man. For everybody listening, I'm here with my client, Jeff Rodgers. Jeff and I have been working together for several years, and he kindly offered up some of his time here this morning to hop on the podcast and just kind of talk shop and really dive into what from my kind of third party view of seeing all the work Jeff has put into his health and fitness journey over the past few years. It's been unbelievably impressive. So I think it'll be really cool to kind of share some of your story, man, and dive into things. So thanks for hopping on. And I guess maybe first and foremost, can you tell folks listening maybe just a little bit about you?
Yeah, for sure. I had to actually take a step back first. Do you know how long we've actually been working together? Because I tried to look back, and I think it's in my mind, it's like been like, maybe like 1 or 2 years, but realistically, I know it's been at least like four, at
I
least, right?
I can tell you because the cool thing about working together for so long is we document things for so
Yeah.
long. And one of the easiest ways to look is like when did you take your first round of progress pictures? Because that's always the
Yeah.
first thing. It looks like it looks like the
2020?
first round was September 4th, 2022.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, yeah. I knew it was definitely post-pandemic for sure. Yeah, that's just wild to think. Because in my mind, like I said, it feels like it's only been maybe like a couple of years, but in reality, it's been like 4 years, which is great. Honestly, it's been obviously it's been quite a journey. So yeah, so as Chris said, my name is Jeff. I am a relatively like new to the whole like fitness lifestyle. I grew up really not giving any sort of damn about my body or just like what I was consuming, what I was doing. I was always active, right? I was always playing sports growing up, but I never truly like leaned in to the fitness side. Like I would do like the bare minimum. Like I would do like the generic conditioning that we would do with like we were doing like high school sports, like the conditioning with that. Like I never liked it. Like I never like found like why I was truly doing that. So working with you over these past couple of years, has really opened my eyes to just a world that I never knew that I personally enjoyed doing. Um, I was always just fearful, right? Like I was just like I never really like the gym always terrified me. The thought of just like going in there and just like hurting your body from a perspective of like lifting weights and then coming out like sore like that to me like that was just like never enjoyable, right? But my perspective on that has significantly changed over the years. As you start to see the results and things like that. Um, it's been quite a journey. So, prior to working with you, Chris, I know we talked about this, but just for the pod, I was very overweight. I mean, at my highest recorded weight, I was 353 pounds. And this was coming off of, I graduated from Pitt and then I moved to Chicago and had just a buffet of, deep dish pizza, hot beef, roast beef sandwiches, anything and everything that Chicago has to offer. And then I leveled it up and moved to Houston, Texas 2 years later and was just open my eyes to even more like, barbecue, Whataburger for those who know, like they'll know. Bucky's. So like I leaned into that pretty hard. Like I would just, between like my work schedule, I was always traveling with my job. And I really just, I never had time to like prepare things for myself. I was always eating out, being extremely lazy after work because I was just too tired from traveling and that. So, um, I got to a weight where I was kind of hit a reality check, right? I kind of realized like what am I doing here? Like something needs to change. Like I would wake up every day, um, probably like drenched in sweat, just because when you're heavier, you kind of retain a lot of heat, right? And I would just like I said, just eat a lot of fast food and things like that. So I just kind of hit that point where I said something has to give, and so I moved back to Pittsburgh in 2016, born and raised. As they say, people say they leave and they always come back. And I told myself I would never be that person that left and came back, but here I am,
Yeah.
10 years later, and I'm still back.
And I think a lot of the people who are that end up coming back probably do that exact same thing, but we still
Yeah,
come back for whatever reason.
yeah, for sure. And so, once I moved back, I had just a random conversation with my mom. So I moved back here with my parents once I got myself all settled. And my mom had one of her friends was working with a nutritionist locally here in Pittsburgh, and she said, "Is this something that you're interested in doing?" Um, and I was hesitant at first, but like once I like read about the program and kind of what it all entailed, I went all in. So through the first 2 or so years of me and my mom doing this together, so we went to this nutritionist. We drove 45 minutes every single week to and from this appointment. So it was a commitment. It wasn't like it wasn't just something you could just kind of like do online and fudge the numbers. It was something you had to do and show up and in person, prove, show your food diary and all that stuff. And that accountability was massive for me. I think also just doing it with my mom too, just had that little extra motivation, right?
Yeah.
Just doing it with somebody, being able to prepare, meals and stuff together. So you're not like worrying about like, oh, what are we going to eat? Like we knew what we were going to eat. We just had to prepare it in the quantity and basically just follow it. Um, so through that nutritionist program, I ended up losing about 120 pounds right from the start. Um, but that program involved strictly just nutrition. There was no like physical aspect of it too, right? So I would, I was kind of like, I looked at my body and I said, yeah, I look skinny, but I looked like rail thin. Like I was like, when I look back at those pictures, I look at myself, I'm like, man, like I wish I would have incorporated, some sort of a weightlifting during that time. Because I really feel like it's good to focus on the nutrition side of it, but I feel like there was definitely a side of it that was lacking by not incorporating some sort of fitness side too. Um, One thing that I can't forget to omit from this discussion too is my first year of working with this nutritionist. I challenged myself to train for the half marathon here in
Mm.
Pittsburgh. I've never been a runner in my life. I have had friends and family who have run in the marathon before, and they kind of encouraged me to do this. I figured, fueling my weight loss journey with being better nutritionally, but also, doing something training wise to challenge myself, with the running side. Um, that was just yeah, that probably helped me to get to my goal a lot quicker, right? I lost that 120 pounds within the first year and change. Without the marathon training, that probably would not have been as high of a number as it was. So yeah, I did do some physical side, but like I left a lot on the table in terms of, like I said, like the weight, like resistance training and things like that. It was more just cardio based, right? Um, so yeah, yes, that was a good challenge. I mean, it was something I never thought I would do, and just being able to run through the streets of Pittsburgh, my hometown, was pretty awesome. Just seeing a bunch of Yinzers just lined up on the side with their signs, and just truly, trying to pass out Iron Cities as you're walking, running by.
I've heard that watching the marathon as a Yinzer is actually a lot more fun than running it. I don't know if you've
Yeah,
tried that other part of it. I've never run it, but I have watched it.
yeah, very
And
much
it
so. And
seems like they have more fun than the runners.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, and if you've never run on the bridges or like the Birmingham Bridge and the West End Bridge specifically, there's more of an incline than you think, especially the Birmingham Bridge. Like that part, once you like they say like the south side is the flattest mile, I believe, on the entire course.
Okay.
And then you hit the Birmingham Bridge, and man, that is just like a straight incline, and you are questioning all your life decisions at that point. Fortunately, I turned left, and the full marathon they went to the right, so bless them for doing that. But yeah, it was such a fun experience. It was something that I never thought I would do, but I'm just so glad that I did.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and I remember that because I think like when you and I started talking, uh, and confirm if I'm correct on this because after 4 years memory can get a little bit hazy, but I do seem to remember you saying like, hey, I've lost a bunch of weight, which I feel really good about, but um, it seemed like maybe you just weren't looking and feeling exactly how you thought you would look and feel when you lost all that weight. Is that
Yeah.
accurate?
Yeah, for sure. The one thing, the reality of being 350 plus pounds is, for an extended period of time. I mean, I've always been big. I've always been just a large human being, even just growing up. From birth, I think literally from like day one, I don't remember exactly what my weight was, but I'm pretty sure I was the heaviest child born in my month of June.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I've always just been big, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that came from being big for so long was that the having excess skin, right? That's just kind of a part of it's just a part of the journey, right? So that was kind of like one of my initial things. I said, if I maybe add in a little more resistance training, that might go down. And that has, for the most part, that has been the case. But there's always still areas where there's definitely some lingering, loose skin at the end of the day. Um, but it's like I said, it's one of the things. It's all part of the journey, right? It's a good reminder of how far you've come. Yeah, it might not look the best, but at the end of the day, it's your body, and you just have to own it, right? And that's just kind of the one mindset shift that I've had to work through for myself. It's been hard, but it's something just kind of that self acceptance of this is who I am, and you can either take it or leave it at the end of the day.
Yeah, I love that, man. I think that is such a good way to frame it. And I actually wanted to dive into that mindset piece next. The first thing I will say though, because I want to go back to what you mentioned about Chicago, and since we both do have a Pittsburgh bond, um, somewhat recently in the Chicago and like my wife's from Wisconsin, right? So it's like kind of like the
Mhm.
lifestyle is very similar in that
Yeah,
corridor. Um, did you by any chance see that clip of TJ Watt explaining how him and his brothers ate when they were kids, like what their diet looked like? Did you catch that? It went pretty viral.
I don't think I did, but seeing all like the Subway commercials and stuff, like the food-based commercials that they're in, I'm not surprised at all. But I'll definitely have to go check that out for
It
sure.
was, dude, it's unbelievable. So when you say like you got caught up in the way of eating in that region, and even in Texas too, I mean, he said like they woke up, they had a breakfast. His dad sent them to school with a lunch to eat before school lunch, and then a lunch to eat after school lunch. And then him and his brothers came home and they had their first dinner, and then before bed they had their second. I mean, it was unbelievable, and so many people were losing their minds. And like since my wife is from Wisconsin, I was like, you know what, that kind of checks out. Like I've been up there a lot. I've seen what the culture's like, and sometimes when you're in specific regions like that, the culture can dictate how things play out for you. I even know a coach friend of mine. I was on his podcast recently, and he's actually he's from the UK. He lives in Portugal now, but he spent a year of his life living in Texas, as you did. And I mean, talk about the culture shock from, I mean, I think it's pretty well understood that, the way Americans live and the way we treat our health and wellness, and especially like the diet side of things, is in stark contrast to if you go over to Europe and see the way that it's kind of handled over there. And he gained a decent amount of weight being in the United States for 1 year because he lived in Texas. So that stuff is all really legitimate.
Yeah, I get it. And it's a lot of, especially like in that Midwestern, it's a lot of like comfort food, right? Like meat and potatoes,
Hmm.
a lot of deep fried this and that. And it's just, yeah, it's the culture, right? It's just a part of, like you said, it's a part of that mentality, right? The Midwest and the South, even here in Pittsburgh, right? It's just we events here are based around food. Like if there's an event, there's always going to be some sort of like a food element to it, right? And the food's not just like little like snacks or thing, like we like to go like above and beyond. And it's just the way that I think it's just it's the culture thing, right? People like express their love and through and care through food, and that's a great thing. But for those of us who can't really contain ourselves when there you have an open buffet of all this delicious food around you, it can be a challenge for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So that's an interesting that's an interesting piece to dive into because, like you said, like I fully believe that what you said, where food is part of culture, and it's important that we embrace it at certain times. But I think some people struggle with the gray area or the fine line between embracing it periodically and then letting that embracement turn into just a never ending buffet, right? So
Yeah.
like how have you been able to manage that, considering that it sounds like from different spots you've been in throughout the years, it has been more challenging. Like how have you been able to kind of make that transition? And this kind of feels into, I'm sure, probably the
Yeah.
mindset piece of it too,
Yeah.
to be able to kind of I guess just focus more on moderation.
Yeah, for sure. And it's still, I would be lying if I said if I went to a party tonight, I would not have, I would still have the same struggles I did, 5, 10 plus years ago. That inner beast inside me that wants to just consume everything it's always going to be there, right? That's like the one thing that's the hardest thing to like accept is that, knowing that I can never change like who I am in the inside. Like it's just, I'm always going to be like that kid who's always just who wants to eat every single thing that they can. But through working with you, we talked a lot about, calorie cycling, throughout the week. Like if you know in advance that you're going to have a couple events on the weekend or something like that, maybe cutting back on a few calories or something during the week to kind of save those up for those days that you're going to have maybe a little more overeating than you normally would. The calorie cycling has been probably the biggest help for me because like in my mind it works, right? I'm just like, because previously me, like I always thought, like you just like it's like a day-to-day thing, but like you opened my eyes to nutrition's like a whole, it's like a time frame. It's not just like a period in time. It's like, like a full week. Like, like when we were tracking, like when I used to track my weight, I would just track it by day, track the ups and downs. But like, you introduced me to the tracking your weight by average, right? So we average the weight throughout the course of the week. And that just makes so much more sense to me. And that kind of ties back into the calorie cycling piece too, right? Because if you save a couple of calories now, it's not you're not just like worrying about that particular day. You're worrying about the full week, the full picture, rather than just like focusing on that one point in time.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is what, trips a lot of people up because if you do calorie cycling or if I mean, even if you don't intentionally structure it that way, but you have a day where you eat more calories than usual, uh, the scale's gonna be up the next day, probably for the next 2 days, maybe 3 days. And so I think people often think, well, because the scale went up 2, 3, 4 pounds because of that day, that means I can't have that type of day. But
Yeah,
you absolutely can. You just need to be strategic about it. You need to be intentional, right?
yeah,
And so
for sure.
I know I'm doing a lot of this personally for myself. As we record this, we're in the middle of football season. We go to football games on the weekends. We tailgate,
Yeah,
and so I want to
yeah,
have some flexibility to do that. So I just eat a little bit less each day throughout the week. And if you do that Monday through Friday and maybe you cut back 100, 200 calories, that's like a very small snack. It's not a lot of food. You could do that on a daily basis and really not notice it making much of a dent. But then you get to the weekend and you find out, oh, I have 1,000 more calories that I can play with. And if we look at the week and the total amount of calories you need to eat in a week to hit your goal, as opposed to day, that just opens up so much more freedom.
yeah, for sure. 100%. Um, yeah, it's a challenge. It's just something. It's just you have to kind of like live in that moment. Like when you're at your event or whatever year it is, just kind of have to. Yeah, you might have that flexibility built in, but you just have to like re-remind yourself, like, okay, like just don't go too overboard. You can still enjoy yourself. I like to use those types of days, like parties and stuff, as little rewards for myself. For doing good throughout the week, save it up for that day. But just have it always keeping in the back of your mind that you just don't go too crazy because you don't want to feel like you're derailing your progress. But you made a good point about about like the weight fluctuations after those types of things, and that's something that I've been extremely open with you about. My frustrations with having those days and then looking at the scale the very next day and like, how in the world did I just gain 5 pounds? I tell this to so many people. Like when I went to LA this summer, and Chris, you and I were on the same flight. We had no idea. I will never forget this. We were flying out to. I said I had a trip out to LA planned for the week. I show up at the airport, and who do I see but Chris and his wife sitting at the gate, and I was just like wait, what? Like what is this? But that after that trip, I was in LA for a solid week, and for lack of embarrassing enough, I gained, I think it was 12 pounds over that week, because like I did not hold back when I was in LA for that week. Man, I ate everything in sight from sushi to I went back to this one taco place 3 times, I think, because the tacos were just so damn good. I was just eating so I was just in the moment, and I definitely didn't I didn't hold myself back enough. But like I said, I gained a significant amount of weight. But after I kind of like took a step back, and the day that I got back from LA, I got back into my same exact routine. I picked up my same exact meals, got my usual, like, my step routine, my gym routine back into play. And I saw the weight slowly start to come back off. Yeah, it didn't all fall off at once, but um, I knew that if I got back into my routine the very next day, that things would be just fine, and things would eventually come off, right? And it's you've instilled this in my brain too. It's not always, you're not gaining fat. I didn't just gain 12 pounds of fat over that course of the week. Yeah, I gained a couple pounds of fat, maybe, of course, but majority of it being, water, just from all like the salt, all the different things that I was consuming in mass while I was out there. So just, using that as a good example for me to be able to remind myself, okay, you can still, go wild for an entire week if you want, like I did. Just getting back into that routine, that very next opportunity that you have to, has probably been my saving grace. It makes it so much easier and just puts it all into perspective that you can do those things. Just know what you have to do to get to claw yourself back, to where you were before that.
Yeah, and that's where habits become so important because if and these have become your habits, but if managing your diet the right way becomes a habit, if getting into the gym and doing your strength training a few times a week becomes a habit, if all of those things are habits in your life, then it makes it that much easier to give yourself the freedom to have a week like that because once I get back to the normal routine, like yeah, I don't want to go on a vacation and just totally let myself go, but like I know that like I can go on that vacation, I can enjoy myself, I can have the tacos 3 times, right? I can like do this type of stuff and come back and understand the scale's going to be up a little bit, but as I get back into my normal routine, things will normalize. I like to say that a lot, where it's like you have a normal routine where things normalize. When we get outside of that normal routine, we're going to have results that are probably outside of the norm, but that's okay because that week vacation that you take happens a couple times a year, maybe. The Thanksgiving dinner happens once a year. The birthday happens once a year. If we take these special occasions and factor them out on like, okay, maybe you have 15 to 20 special days a year. The percentage of that out of 365 days of the year is pretty small. So if you have the right habits in place, you can give yourself the freedom to do that type of stuff, and
Yeah, yeah,
it's all
for
gonna be all
sure,
right.
for sure. And it's, coming back from that week, if I picked myself and put myself back, 10, 15 plus years ago, I would have let that week completely derail my progress. I would have said, you know what? I've already gained this weight. Like, what's the point? Like, like why not just like keep the good times rolling and just like continue to fall back into that, that state of just, wanting to just eat this and eat all that. So, that's been another big mindset shift that you've helped me get through as well. It's just, you had that time and it's fine. Just cut it off and just start new. There's no need to let that one little particular time completely derail, months, weeks, years of progress that you've made, just over that one little thing. Just like that's the thing. We grew up in a time frame where, the scale was like the number on the scale was everything. Like,
Mm.
I'd go into school and I would have my yearly physical or whatever, and they would say, "Oh, you're overweight. Like, you're overweight." And yeah, okay, I was like, I definitely was overweight, as in perspective, but everything was just so numbers and scale driven, and that's been a big hurdle for me to overcome. And I'm not, it's not just something that I know it's a lot of people in our age range struggle with, because everything was about, BMI and, how much you weigh. And that's it. Like, there was no other like scale to compare it to say you're either overweight or underweight. And that was it. So that's been a huge, mental shift for me too. Like, yeah, I might be overweight, but there's more to it than that. There's more to, it's, what are your activity levels? And it said there's so much more that comes into play than just the number on the scale. And, that's been tough. It's been a big mental hurdle, like I said, for me to overcome. But it's definitely one that I definitely feel like I definitely have a better grasp on, and am able to, position myself better going forward.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. How old are you?
35.
Okay, and so I'm 38. So yeah, I mean, we're definitely in the same kind of generation there. And I think, we grew up with parents who were like from the clean your plate club, right? And so that kind of
Yep.
got passed on to us. But then we had some additional factors, like you mentioned, with like, I totally forgot until you mentioned that we had like the yearly thing at
Mm-hmm.
school. And now I'm like having these memories flood into my
Right.
mind about how like we all had to run a mile. Like,
Yeah.
do
Oh
they?
God.
I don't know. Well, I mean, we'll say I have 3 kids who are just getting into, school now. My daughter's in kindergarten, my oldest. So let's see if like that's a thing. I don't know if that's a thing anymore,
Yeah.
but I remember kids suffering through that. That was like a brutal day for a lot of
Oh
kids.
yeah. That was, yeah. That was me.
Yeah. But so
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
you were I think we were like on opposite ends of the spectrum. I was actually always told I was underweight. And
Yeah.
so that is also a thing that I've carried with me. So I feel like
Sure.
no matter what end of the spectrum you're on,
Yeah.
like those experiences early on, you carry with you. And so like for the longest time, I was told I needed to gain weight. I couldn't figure out how to gain weight because I didn't have the appetite to do it. But then as I got later into life, uh, I just had that mindset of like, I need to eat, I need to eat, I need to eat. And then it caught up to me, and I found myself, the heaviest I've been is close to 200 pounds, which didn't feel good for me. I mean, you're significant. One of the things I realized when we met each other in the gate, I've seen your height on paper. I did not realize how much taller you are
Yeah, yeah,
than me. But what, you like 6'5", 6'4"?
yeah, 6'4", yeah,
Yeah,
six
so
four.
you're a lot taller than me.
Yeah,
But that was a really uncomfortable way for me. And then that was a realization. So, yeah, it's interesting how those early experiences can carry with you for so long and probably never go away. Because I still will have those moments when I'm in the gym thinking, like, I would like to be a little bit bigger. I'd like to be a little bit stronger. I'd like to have a little bit more muscle. So, and I think people who are constantly told they need to lose weight from a young age are probably always going to step on the scale and say, like, well, I'd be okay if that number would be a little bit lower than it is today.
yeah,
So that's kind of a tough battle that we all
yeah,
have to
for
manage.
sure. What were those called? Were they called like the presidential medals of fitness or something? Because like we had to do. I know we had to do like we had to run a mile. You had to do like pull-ups or something.
Yeah.
And there was like there were like two or there were like three or four movements or something that you had to do. And I will never forget being forced to do pull-ups in front of your classmates. Like I think I could do like I don't even think I could do one pull-up. Like when we were doing those things. And it was so like so embarrassing, like I was just, you're as a kid, it's fun and all that, but if you see other kids being able to do multiple pull-ups and stuff like that, and there's me get up there like I can't even like hold I can't even hoist myself up to do one. It's a
Yeah.
humbling experience. It's something I think it's a lot of pressure to put on kids. I get it, I get what they're trying to do, like the message of it, trying to promote fitness and wellness and stuff, but man, that was not fun. I think my first ever like recorded mile for that, I think it was like over 20 minutes. Like it was like a 20 minute, like, because I think I like walked majority of the mile too, right?
Hmm.
I wasn't really in a position to be able to run. There was no way in hell I was gonna be able to run an entire mile back when I was a kid. But it was, those pretty humbling experiences overall, for sure.
Yeah. Hopefully if they do that nowadays, it's more on like a individual level. Yeah, because you
Yeah,
talking about that, doing the pull-ups, like that can be really humiliating. I remember a buddy of mine, his name is Brian. He couldn't do he could barely do half a lap. And I
yeah,
remember him, we were all done with the mile and he was walking around that track for so long. And I,
yeah,
I remember back then thinking like this sucks for him, like
yeah,
this is tough. So
yeah, for
yeah.
sure.
Well, so those are all like significant points of discomfort. And I know you mentioned earlier that getting into the gym and kind of like making your body feel uncomfortable on purpose
Yeah,
is was never something you were like super interested in. So you mentioned a bit about how like you lost a bunch of weight, but maybe weren't still looking and feeling the way you wanted to. Was that the switch that flipped to get you to want to do strength training, or like kind of what happened there to make you want to willingly do that thing that you knew was something that you really didn't have a high interest in doing?
yeah, for sure. So I was, just like a lot of other people in this world, I would used to try and get myself into the gym. Prior to you and me working together, not necessarily was like a newbie to the gym. Like I would always try and go to the gym. Like I would go for a short period of time. I never knew what I was doing in the gym. Like that was probably one of my biggest things too. Like I would just go to the gym and just kind of like do some movements that I thought would be a benefit, right? Trying to like throw something together from what you see, other folks post online. I would just kind of like do some movements, like pick and choose, like what, but I never truly really like targeting, like muscle groups like you and I do on a weekly basis, right? So, um, I was no stranger to the gym, but I was never like the gym never felt like a comfortable place for me. Like I would always go there, feel super intimidated by it, and then just kind of like something would happen that I would just kind of fall off and never go back. Like I donated a lot of money to Planet Fitness in my life prior to so Planet Fitness, they made a lot of money off me because I would go to the gym and just stop for months of periods of time. So something just switched. Yeah, the switch in me was like I think it was truly that point, like you mentioned. Once I kind of finished the marathon training, I was always kind of like, what's next? I'm a very competitive person. Like I played sports growing up, like I mentioned. So I was always in a competitive mindset, right? So like I wanted to find something else to do, find something else to compete. Not saying I want to become like a competitive bodybuilder, like a power lifter or anything by that, but I knew that I wanted to do something else. So that's kind of, happened to stumble across you on social media. Had been following you for some time. I was like, okay, like this, like maybe this is my chance. Like maybe, I saw you were offering up positions for coaching. And I think that was just that point. I was like, you know what, maybe this is it. Like maybe this is my time to really make this gym habit stick. Because for me, the gym was always very intimidating, right? You see these men and women who are very extremely fit, and it can be intimidating, right? It's something that it was. You walk in there, and then there's me, like looking like I've never lifted a day in my life. It was scary at first, right? But something, the mindset shifted in me that at the end of the day, those people that are in there and that have, these great physiques, like they put their time in, right? And those are often the people that are the most willing to help you. Like if you ever have any questions, like I've never asked people questions in the gym before, but like over these past couple of years of you and I working together, if I've been, asked if I've been doing something like, hey, am I doing this right? Like I would tap on somebody and say, can you watch me do this? Can you offer any pointers? Something, and they're always willing to help. Like, and that's the thing that was a big hurdle for me to jump over too, was just the people want to help you, right? I mean, yeah, maybe they look, yeah, they're in the zone. Like when you go to the gym, right? You're in the zone, like you're focused on what you're doing, but there are people that are willing to help too, and that kind of eased my mind a lot. And at the end of the day, I always felt like people were like looking at me, like like look, we're gonna watch me do my sets and do my movements and stuff, but um, when you go to the gym, like nobody's looking at you. Like people are truly doing their own thing, and that was huge for me. I don't know why I always thought like why is everybody looking at me, but like at the end of the day nobody is. It's like why
Yeah.
did I tell myself that, why was I lying to myself over all these years thinking I'm not going to go to the gym because X person is going to watch me do my bicep curls or something like that. Like that's just not true. That's just not true at
Yeah.
all.
When you say it out loud like that, it helps you realize how silly
Yeah,
it is, but it's so easy to get trapped in that mindset of it. And I was there for so long too. Yeah, man, everybody, especially the people that you mentioned, the ones that, that are in really impressive shape. Uh, like you said, they put the work in because they have the same voices in their heads that we do, right?
yeah,
Then they
yeah,
just use them as fuel. And now they got to this point. And so people who get into the gym who are just starting or maybe feel intimidated, it's important to understand that like those people were you, and you
yeah,
asking them questions is actually exactly what they want because
yeah,
anybody in that position wants to help you overcome those demons faster than they did.
yeah,
Like,
for sure.
so yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome, man, that you've gotten to that point.
Yeah, because you see so many videos of people saying, oh, I wish I would have done this in the gym sooner and stuff like that. Like you said, it's out there. Like people want to be of assistance. They want you to succeed, right? Nobody wants to see somebody go to the gym and fail and hurt themselves, right? Get the gym is a good thing, right? It's something that's it's a positive environment. Some gyms can be a little scary, a little dungeony sometimes too. But then, that's there's but the good thing too is that there's so many different varieties of gyms too. You got brand new gyms. You have gyms that have, I mean, like Planet Fitnesses type places, or you have like I go to a UFC gym, and they have so much different offerings, like equipment. They have different types of equipment. They have like a boxing arena. They have like a turf area to do all these other different types of movements. Kettlebells and like those what are those ropes, the XXR ropes, those like
Oh,
those things.
are you talking about battle ropes or are you talking about like the TRX straps?
Yeah, the TRX, yeah, like
Gotcha.
those things too. So it's just like finding your niche, like finding your gym. Like not every gym's gonna work for everybody, right? It's just like
Yeah.
finding like the one in particular that that happen to like works that works with kind of like your goals too. That's been a big help too. Just and especially having for me too, having access to the gym is huge. I am able to get my fortunate enough to be able to get my workouts in during my workday. I can take my lunch and have my hour to go and do my workout and then come right back home. And the gym's maybe like 10 minutes away from my house. So for me, like that's a big proponent. That really promotes me to want to be able to go to the gym. If I know that's only 10 minutes away, like if I had to drive a half hour to go to the gym, like I know there's some people that do have to do that, and that's totally fine. But for me, like that would be a struggle. So like for me, is like finding like a gym that worked for me, but that was also close enough to me that I didn't have to make it as much of a chore. But you and I worked at this last year too. So my UFC gym was being converted over from a crunch before, and they were offering me while that was being, so the gym was closed for a solid 2 month period. So they were offering me a continued membership at a different UFC location, which just happened to be downtown. So I really had to modify my schedule to be able to make it work. But at the end of the day, if you want something hard, if you want something enough, you're going to make it, you're going to do what you need to do to make it happen. And that, if that meant me waking up at, sometimes I shifted my workouts to the morning. I would wake up at 4 in the morning, get down there, my workouts in before work. It's just finding what works for you, right? Just finding like that niche of a schedule that works for what works with your day and all that stuff, and just making it happen and just kind of find a way to stick to it.
Yeah, you've been unbelievably consistent, man, which you deserve so much credit for. And it's that much more impressive considering how little of a desire you have
Yeah,
had for training in the past. I'm curious to hear from you though about, when you think about all this work that you put in the gym. We've talked a lot about, results. We've talked about the scale. We've talked about, visually seeing progress. But like, are there any ways you've seen this strength training piece to the puzzle really bleed into everyday life where you've had like maybe noticeable milestones and saying like, oh, my energy's better or like doing this task is easier? Anything like that has stood out to you?
yeah, for sure. So I mean, energy levels for sure has probably been my biggest change. I definitely would always wake up in the morning just kind of feeling really groggy, just feeling like, man, like I just do not want to get out of bed. And look, there are still days where that still happens. I'm not gonna lie, it's not in there. I don't wake up every single day like, man, I'm just so excited to go to work and and do go through the day. But it's energy levels for sure have been a huge improvement for 100%. Um, I mean, I don't know. I don't know that I noticed many other, like regular differences, like day-to-day differences, but just to one, you said just like feel like and look too. Like, I could definitely tell that, my clothes definitely fit a little differently than they did before, which is always good. It's always good confidence boost, in that regard. But the one thing that I do is, like I mentioned before, I'd said I was a competitive person, and the one thing that's really helped me in my mind, I kind of turned, the my workouts into a competition against myself.
Mm.
If I can't compete against somebody else, I'm going to compete against myself to try and maybe up the weight maybe 5-10 pounds on a certain instance if I can, just to kind of, for those who have that competitive fire just like always within them, just like finding the way to compete against yourself. And I saw that online somewhere at some point, and that really stuck with me. Is that if you can't make it a competition, like externally, make it a competition with yourself to be a better version of yourself than you were the day before. And that has been something else I think that has really just stuck with me through the journey as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the football team that we follow, I think Pat Narduzzi always says like 3% better every day or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah,
And it's a cliche, right? I mean, it is,
yeah,
but
for
I
sure.
think
Yeah,
most cliches are born from a place of truth where if you are focused on just getting even 1% better every day, as opposed to trying to accomplish the entire journey in a month, if
yeah,
you're focused on just the 1% better every day, the impact that can make over time, it does add up. It does snowball into
yeah,
something massive. It's a lot easier and more sustainable to achieve. And I'm with you. Like, I think so. I feel like most kids growing up participate in some type of activity where there is a competition, whether
mhm.
it's a sport, whether you're doing a science fair or what's the one where they have you spell words? What do they call that thing?
Spelling bee.
Spelling bee. Look at me. I clearly
Yeah,
was
yeah,
not involved in
yeah.
those.
That thing.
um,
Funny.
yeah, but we have some type of competition kind of like baked into our adolescence. So like I think everybody is competitive in some way.
Yeah,
And that's a great way to channel it. And I think there is something beneficial to like still having competition in your life as you get older, because so many of those things that we do earlier in life are good for us. And we lose them as we get later into life when we're
Yeah.
focused on a career, focused on a family, focused on all of these other things. We move less, we sit more, we stop, only move straight up and down or straight forward or backward. We're not going into these different planes of motion. We're not, interacting with other people as much. We're not in all these environments that can make us better. So I think like if you can find something like that, like training, where you do just get a little bit of that competition, it not only helps you improve your health and fitness, build muscle, burn body fat, look better, feel better, but I think it also just kind of bakes into your mind that idea of like get better today in some way, right? And
Yeah.
then I think if you have that, we talked about habits earlier, if that's part of your habit set too, that's going to be something that is going to that will be unbelievably powerful for you over the long term.
Yeah, for sure. We all want instant gratification, right? We all want to go to the gym for a week and then all of a sudden just think, okay, we're done. Like we're fit. Like this is I've achieved my goal. But it's such a, you have to just like the little bit improvement every single day. Yeah, yeah, you might not see it in the mirror, you might not see it on the scale, but it's just as you compound that over the course of, months and years and stuff, it just becomes so much more manageable, right? It just kind of fuels, like it just fuels you to want to continue to be, a better version of yourself if you can. Like, yeah, not every day. I don't want to go to the gym every single day, but sometimes, it's the workouts that you do when you don't want to do them that you really feel the best and like just like the most reward. Like, man, like you can wake up and just say, man, I just do not want to do this today, but forcing yourself to do it, you feel so much better afterwards. I think those are the ones that you really feel like, yeah, like this is those moments are like the ones that I really like relish in. Like I'm so proud of like when I do those workouts that I don't want to do because you just like I say, you just feel so good. And it's just you accomplished you just like you battled your inner demon that said, hey, you don't have to you don't have to do this today. But when you beat it, you just feel so much better. And it's something that has really helped me just maintain that consistency that you talked about just kind of over the course of the years we've been working together for sure.
Well, and so for people to put some numbers to what Jeff has achieved here, I brought up your charts, and we kind of have them in two different spots because we've been working together for so long. But if you look at from a body weight perspective, where Jeff started, right around a little bit below 250 when we started working together, like 247, 248. And I think it's really interesting, man. You wrapped up a cut, and in the weeks since then, your weight has actually continued to go down, where you down to 219, which is an all-time low, which is super cool, man. So
Yeah.
congratulations for
Yeah,
that.
for sure. Yeah, appreciate
Um,
that. Yeah.
and then if we look at like even deeper into the details, looking at your waist measurements, man, 44 was the first one, down to 35.5. I mean, you've lost almost 10 inches off your waist.
Yeah.
That's almost a foot
Yeah.
off your waist, man. That's
Yeah.
crazy. That's
Yeah.
absolutely crazy. So like, I don't know, how do those numbers make you feel? And what do you want to do next? What's next for you?
Yeah. So yeah, it makes me want to just continue to try it. A big theme of what we've been talking about this just within this hour has been, mental hurdles, right? And we're going to be transitioning within the next 2 weeks over into a bulk for the winter, right? A lean bulk for the winter. Um, you know, if you would have told previous me that, I would want to actually work on gaining weight, I would have just, like paused. Like that alone would have just like freaked me out. Um, so, like the shift of like being able like accepting the fact that you like if you want to, so like, my goal for this upcoming bulk is I definitely want to add a little bit of muscle, for sure. Yeah, that's definitely the focus that I want to have for this particular bulk. And just knowing that, um, sorry, I just had a brain fart. You can edit this part out.
That's
I
okay.
don't
Yeah.
know why I had a brain fart. What were we talking? So
You were
what,
talking.
what,
Yeah, it's okay. I no, just asking about like, you've made so much progress.
right.
How does that make you feel? And then, kind of where do you want to take things moving
Yeah.
forward?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. So yeah, with this bulk that we're going to be doing, definitely, like I said, I want to focus on, gaining muscle, and just knowing that I can gain and lose weight without letting it affect me too much has been huge. Like gaining weight has always been something like nobody's ever told me to gain weight. Like that's never been something that I've been that's been like promoted to me. But like knowing that that we can work together in a way to make it work towards my goals. That's just when I go all in. Like I'm totally, I'm all in for it. I know this next bulk we're probably gonna maybe do it for like maybe like 4 or 5 months. It's just like knowing all the work we put in so far, like what could come over the next 4 or 5 months. That's just kind of helps me want to just continue to do better, right? And just obviously knowing that there's a little extra calories come along the way, that's never a bad thing, because I like to eat. Obviously, that's been another theme of this discussion so far. So being able to kind of have that little extra flexibility is always is going to be great for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And just for some context to the listener, Jeff and I have done this before, looking at, again, his chart. Like in June of last year, you were back up into the 240s. But one of the things that we saw is like when you got back up to that weight, by giving you more calories, by strength training purposefully, we saw that, like, based on your measurements, you gained weight, but a significant amount of it was muscle because the waist measurement was still far lower. And, so there's ways you can do it and be intentional with it that, can turn weight gain into a good thing, which
Yeah,
needs to be something that people understand, is like that actually can be a thing. Is weight
yeah,
can be good if you're managing it, um, the right way.
yeah,
But I guess the last thing I got for you, man, is, part of what we talked about before hopping on here was just, I think these discussions can be so helpful for other people because everybody's heard me talk about this stuff enough. So hearing it from other people, I think, can be really motivating to hear from somebody like yourself who has seen so much progress, been able to develop the right habits, been able to be consistent. Um, if you were to interact with somebody who was kind of where you were 4 years ago, right? Or maybe even longer, what type of advice would you have for them?
yeah.
Or if you were to give them like a first step or two, in terms of working in the right direction, what would that look like?
Yeah, for sure. I think, this is something that you've kind of instilled in me as well, just from listening, from your content over the years and it says, et cetera, is just finding something that works for you. Yeah, weightlifting might not be for everybody, but that's just kind of what worked for me in this current phase of my life. It's just finding something that works. I mentioned all these different gyms have all these so many different offerings these days, like a UFC type gym, right, where they have different, finding something that works for you. And that's been huge on like the nutrition side of it as well. I am blessed with the ability to eat the same thing every single day. Like I'm not somebody that has to like leftovers. Like I grew up on leftovers, right? So we talked about growing up with food. My family always had Sunday was like the big cooking day, and you'd have meals for basically for the entire week. I keep that the same today. I do the same exact things. I prepare my lunches. Everything is prepared on Sunday. I have probably like a solid like two, three, four like dinners that I rotate between. Because as you and I work together, we've messed with like my macros, adjusted them here and there, my calories, etc. So I basically can know exactly what I know what my calories are going to be every single day because I eat basically more or less the same things, just kind of rotate a little bit. Doesn't say I don't like, I'm not saying I don't like a little bit of variety, but I can easily eat, I've eaten the same lunch every single day for probably the last 5 years. So I do either ground turkey or chicken, and I mix in some sort of vegetable into that. I throw some black beans into it, and I throw rice into it too. So you have your carbs, you have fats, you have fibers, you have vegetables, and you have protein.
Yours
Every
sounds a
single
lot.
one.
Yours sounds a lot like mine, Jeff.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So just and like there's so many different offerings out there today too, right? There's like salt-free, seasonings, there's sugar-free, like sauces and stuff. So it's just like finding what works for you. That's probably my biggest piece of advice is just like finding this thing, just like sticking to it. Because the more you stick to it, just the easier it becomes because there's nothing wrong with mixing it up if you can't eat the same thing every day, and that's totally fine. It's just finding those foods that work for you, and just being able to like pick like core proteins and core things, and like just making like small tweaks to it. Like I said, different sauces, different seasonings, different flavorings, and this and that. Finding what works and just making it stick. That's probably those are probably my biggest bits of advice. If I look back at my previous self, I did not do any of that. Like especially after I moved away after college and when I was living on my own for those X years, I did not meal prep at all. I did none of the sort. So it's just having food available too has probably been another big aspect of it too, right? Um, it's when you don't have food, you kind of what do you default to, right? You default to something that's easy. You default to fast food or like takeout of some sorts. Um, when I don't have food available, that's when I find myself craving like going to McDonald's or going to Popeyes or something like that the most. So just like being able to like know your weakness and just like knowing what you can plug in to fill that just makes it so much because like I don't want to do dishes every day. Like I don't want to make a meal and have to make a meal and all of a sudden have to clean up after yourself all so it's just like I said, really just finding what works for you both nutritionally and physically, and just sticking to it. I think that's probably my biggest bit of advice I could offer for sure.
Yeah, I love that. And that really comes down to like personalize it to you, right?
Yeah,
Don't do the influencer workout program because they say it's best.
yeah,
Don't do the keto diet because you hear you can lose 60 pounds in 2 months. Like put the
yeah.
work in and personalize it to you because that's going to be sustainable. And that's why somebody like Jeff has been able to do this for 4 years now. And we're just going to keep the progress rolling. So,
Yeah, I say
um,
this is our journey. I know I say this all the time, but I think our journey is only just beginning. Like I said, it's been 4+ years, but I have no plans of stopping it with you, Chris, because you make it so easy. You ask for my input. You check in every single week. Yeah, it might seem a lot of work, but if it takes maybe 20 minutes to reply to you in an email and have some back and forth through that, you make it so easy for me to want to succeed, right, and to want to be consistent, right. I mentioned before, not having really any idea of what I how to when I was going to the gym before, like I didn't know what to do. But working with you, like I know exactly what I'm doing every single time that I go into the gym. And if I ever have an issue or if, a little injury pops up, and just like last week, I was doing some Bulgarian split squats, and I told you I said I was having some issues with my knee. So it took a couple weeks from doing that off. And then, realized that when you actually program splits, you actually program regular split squats, not the Bulgarian version of it. So I did those this past week, and that variant is just works so much better for me. So like I said, I can't, give you enough praise, Chris, because you've made this journey just so much easier for myself, and you've made me want to succeed because without working with you, I think it's just having that accountability, right? Just having somebody like yourself who's willing to check in every single week, who's willing to watch my form check videos. Yeah, like you're a digital coach. I've met you once in person, but I feel like I definitely consider you like a great friend because we've done a lot. We've been through a lot over these past 4 years,
yeah,
especially. And it's been a fun journey. And like I said, this is only the start. Like I have no plans of changing anything anytime soon. So I just I'm excited to continue through this next bulk and then kind of the cut that comes that and then whatever comes after that.
that's awesome. Yeah, man, I'm glad that it's been you've enjoyed it. It's obviously been you've seen success because of the hard work you put in, which has been really cool to see. So I'm glad that it's benefited you, and I feel the same way too. I will say to the listeners, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. I do make Jeff do sled pushes sometimes, and so
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun though. Like, I've never done, we just started doing sled pushes for the first time in this most recent block that we're doing. And man, that is such a great finisher to a workout. Like walking down those steps after finishing the sled pushes, it's painful. It's not painful. It's just
it's hard.
yeah, ginger
Yeah,
leaves. Like so I actually for the first time took the elevator this past week because I just said, what? I was like, I know it's only one floor. I just said I can't do it. Like I'm gonna treat myself to the elevator today.
that's okay. Normally, I tell people to take the steps, but in your case,
Yeah.
that's an important caveat. If you
Yeah.
just did sled pushes, take the elevator. It's okay.
Yeah, I mean, split squats, a workout finisher of split squats and then sled pushes. Yeah, it's you're gonna feel it. You're gonna feel it.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, all right, Jeff, man, thank you for doing this. I appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. Anytime.